Hello again to this video clip series that I'm calling My Journey to God in a Very Secularized World. I would like to add just a few other quotes from Our Lady to Don Stefano Gobi to put the words of this Don Giuliano Zanchi before the words of Our Lady, the priest that Cardinal Bassetti invited to the Diocese of Perugia to talk to all of the priests of Perugia several years ago. Another quote from Our Lady here is, she says, "You will live out the gospel to the letter. You will be poor, simple, pure, little, and totally given over to the Father. By your word, which will repeat ever more loudly and clearly the truth which my Son Jesus has come to reveal to you. Do you see how many of your brother priests betray this truth in the attempt to adapt it to the mentality of the world, impelled by a false illusion of being better understood, listened to by more people, and more easily followed?" And then Our Lady says, listen to this, how strong this is. She says, "No illusion is more dangerous than this." You know, I remember also a kind of an image here that in this period when the truth is suppressed, confusion and everything, when there's more and more darkness, in other words, without the truth, you know, you can see in the night, when the night is very dark, you can see a little candle very far away because it's so dark. So what I'm saying is, if only a few priests stand up for the truth, it's like a candle in the darkness. And this is why the few bishops and priests who offer the truth simply, but also with humility and charity, they have so many means, the Freemasons, of suppressing with the mass media, keeping them off the mass media, in so many ways of getting rid of the truth. Another the last message was from February 2, 1976. Here's another message. "And as a consequence, these priests, these sons of my maternal predilection, may find themselves left to their own resources. Thus, an increasing number are led astray by the general confusion, become the victims of error and wander far away from my Son Jesus and the truth of his gospel. Thus their light becomes extinguished, and the faithful walk in darkness. How many there are among them who now live habitually in sin, and who turn a deaf ear to my pressing invitations to conversion. They even try to justify themselves, adapting themselves to the mentality of the world, which today legitimizes even the most serious moral disorders. How many of my priest sons no longer pray? They are swallowed up in activities and no longer have a moment to pray." Another, that message, by the way, was January 15th, 1977. Here's another message. Their only concern is exclusively directed toward social problems, and they forget that Jesus died on the cross and rose again to obtain for you the great gift of redemption and to save souls. And thus the teaching of the theology of liberation, which is a true betrayal of Christ and of his gospel, is becoming more and more widespread. She gave that message on February 25th, 1988 in São Paulo, Brazil, where theology of liberation is rather strong. Another message similar to that, she says, "Even the church which lives and suffers in this continent is threatened with an interior division caused by dissension from the Pope and by opposition to his magisterium on the part of some bishops, theologians, priests, and lay persons. Above all, my adversary has sought to strike her with the subtle snare of liberation theology, which is a true betrayal of Christ and his gospel. She gave that message on February 27, 1992 in Quito, Ecuador. Another message from Quito, El Salvador. She says, in this country, where my adversary has succeeded in seducing very many of my children with the dangerous air of liberation theology, I am forming my cohort with all my poor and little children. That was in Iobasco, El Salvador, February 13th, 1994. I would like to talk about one of the sneaky strategies of the Freemasons to criticize, very similar to like Don Giuliano Zanchi, that priest from Bergamo that my Cardinal Bassetti invited. You know, you remember when I said that he said to us priests here at Perugia that we must resign ourselves to the mentality of the world of cohabitation and unmarried couples, and those who do not do this have a psychological and moral problem. It's totally reversed today. It's exactly opposite of the words of Christ, exactly opposite of the words of the saints. You know, you just think of St. John the Baptist. He said to the king, it's not lawful for you to keep the wife of your brother. Zanchi is saying this is a good thing. It's totally reversed. Families are falling apart because of this, and people don't open their eyes. And the priests of Perugia, almost no one opened up their eyes to this. And so I'd like to. There's an article that I wrote that talked a little bit about this, which you can find at my website, index website, called "Rigid with Christ: The Immutable Truth," and underneath in parentheses, the great damage due to the camouflaged hypocrisy of Pope Francis. And this article I talked about, he had in a prepared speech to the bishops of Mozambique, for example, on September 7th, 2019, Francis warned them against young, rigid priests. Young, rigid priests. And he says, I would like to emphasize an attitude that I do not like, because it does not come from God, he says. Rigidity. He said, today it is fashionable to find rigid people. Listen how he talks. He's smooth, man, he's smooth. He added, young rigid priests who want to save with rigidity, I don't know, but they take this attitude of rigidity and sometimes, from the museum. All the priests who remain faithful to the truth are from an old museum centuries ago, and they haven't become modern priests to take people where they are, accept sin and just the way that people want, and you're a nice priest because you give the blessing to whatever they want to do, and that's the best way to be a priest. Otherwise, you should go back to the museum. It's incredible what he's saying here. And he also added, let's see here, where is it? And then here on an article that you could find in the same article, you can find the references to these articles. An article that was published at that time, it says, from the papacy of clarity in dialogue, in-flight press conference, more stones from the Vatican. It's a sneaky way also how he does it from in-flight press conferences, so you can't pin him down as an encyclical or whatever, but he gets the job done of promoting his agenda without being able to be accused of not following the doctrine of the church. It's real smooth. Another article was, let's see, well, that's pretty good. Anyway, in his speech, it is very clear that Pope Francis is referring to young, rigid priests who are not willing to change or compromise the truth that comes from God. The truth that God has given to mankind throughout the centuries, which we call divine revelation, and which is infallibly explained by the church that Jesus Christ founded, the Catholic Church. The truth of God does not change with the world, and thus the documents of the Catholic Church over 2,000 years, which explain the truth of God, cannot change even though the majority of people today want to change the truth of God according to their pleasure and rationalistic interpretation of divine revelation. I will stop here this video clip. May God bless you and Mary guide you.